A person who thinks all the time has nothing to think about except thoughts. So, he loses touch with reality and lives in a world of illusions.
Some coping mechanisms for anxiety and depression, as seen online, such as Instagram and Twitter, would tell the person to just breathe and think that everything's going to be okay. And sometimes that doesn't help. People cope with depression and anxiety in many different ways.
According to Medical News Today, anxiety disorders occur when a person regularly feels disproportionate levels of distress, worry, or fear over an emotional trigger, while depression is a mood disorder characterized by persistently low mood and a feeling of sadness and loss of interest.
Though not fully understood, experts at Mayo Clinic say that anxiety can be caused by underlying issues such as heart disease, diabetes, and past traumatic events. Anxiety can also have a serious effect on someone's mental health. Symptoms include a sense of incoming danger, difficulty maintaining worry, and hyperventilating or having an increased heart rate. As said with anxiety, experts at the same clinic claim that the exact causes are not known with depression, though some say that depression can be inherited through genetics. Some symptoms may include the loss of pleasure in activities, feelings of emptiness or sadness, or even frequent thoughts of death or suicide. So you'll be hearing from a few high school students and my therapist and the school psychologist at high school. The first person I interviewed was my great friend who's been dealing with anxiety for a very long time.
I'm feeling pretty okay today. Kind of boring, like a boring day, but I'm chilling.
Alrighty, do you have any negative coping skills like whenever you feel anxious?
Yeah, I will twirl my hair. Like, it's like a nervous tick. I've had it since I was like in elementary school, but that's like all the time. Sometimes I'll like pull at my eyebrows, but that's a little less frequent.
Are you on any medications, and which ones are you on?
I'm on Lamictal and Prestige. Lamictal, wait, which one's Lamictal? Hang on. I think Lamictal is one for the mood disorder, and the Prestige.
So one of them is for mood disorders, and what's the other one for?
Lamictal is for the mood disorders, and it can also be used for schizophrenia, but I don't have schizophrenia. And Prestige is just like the depression, anxiety medication. Prestige.
All right, cool. And do you think it helps you with your anxiety or depression and your mood disorders?
Yeah, but sometimes if I take it like a little too late, or
like infrequently?
Let's say I take it after 12 o'clock, like I'll be way off, and I will just not feel like myself, like I don't really feel.
Right.
So I just feel numb, and so I try taking it at a normal time. But sometimes I forget, and that's not good.
All right, and so what caused you to do these certain habits whenever you feel anxious, and why?
Well, I twirl my hair because my dad did it when he was a kid, and I think he might have done it for a little bit, like with his beard. And so since I was young, I've done it for as long as I can remember. And the pulling at my eyebrows, I don't even know why I really started it. I think it just kind of became a habit out of nowhere.
Right.
Just started it and it didn't stop. And the reason why I get anxious is, I mean, like big groups of people, like talking to a bunch of people, being put on the spot makes me very anxious. But like talking to new people, it's mainly people based. But
the social anxiety.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty bad.
Thank you, Lauren, for answering my questions. I know it was probably difficult for you to be one-on-one because you're under the pressure. But I appreciate you trying, and it means a lot.
Of course. Anytime.
I then interviewed my other good friend who has dealt with depression in the past. When were you diagnosed with depression?
Probably January 2019. Things were getting bad in the beginning of 9th grade, and I went to the psychiatrist and I got a diagnosis in January. Okay.
So were there any coping mechanisms that were positive that you've done when you were depressed? What were they?
I'm an artist, so frequently I do draw, but I remember when I was in the worst of it, I tend to not draw, and I usually base how well I'm doing depending on how much I draw. And it does work now, but then it wasn't developed yet. So but now I'm a lot better.
And have you overcame your depression in the past, was it 2 years?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, it's always the lasting effect it had on my brain was it's still there.
Right.
My emotions are pretty hollowed out,
Right.
and it's kind of hard to feel sad, which sounds like a good thing, but it's really not. And I'm not in ninth grade was the worst I ever was.
Right,
So it's only, I guess we could say I've hit rock bottom, and then so we can only go up. And I think that I'm just doing a lot better now, so that's good.
That's good. Have you suppressed or ignored any negative feelings for like a certain amount of time, and why would you do that?
I have. My brain kind of learned that as a coping mechanism to,
Right.
subconscious, I guess, to ignore it. So whenever I do feel like a negative emotion, I either
Ignore it, just put it back, put it at the back, you know?
Yeah, and I also tend to ruminate on it, and I would think that's the worst thing, but even though it's not, it's hard to explain, but yeah.
Yeah. Alrighty. That's all the questions. Thank you very much for answering them. If you need anything, just hit me up, alrighty? Then my therapist sent me videos of her answering my questions because she was unable to get interviewed.
Coping strategies or coping mechanisms are things that we do to cope or deal with stressful situations. And they can be positive and healthy, or they can be negative and potentially harmful. So for example, some positive coping strategies might be things like working out or exercising, meditating, yoga, listening to music, talking to a friend or somebody that you trust, or any other kind of hobbies like art and photography, going for a walk, playing with a pet. Some other negative coping strategies, things that are potentially harmful, using drugs, drinking alcohol, overeating, blaming somebody else, or denying that there's a problem, things like that. And what we do in therapy is to try to focus on positive coping strategies and learning how to cope in healthy ways when things get stressful. So the next question is about medication. And medication questions are kind of tricky because I'm not a psychiatrist. So I can't prescribe medication. But there are some situations where I would refer a client to me with a psychiatrist for a consultation to see if medication might be helpful. And usually those are situations where therapy alone just isn't showing enough progress. And I do think medication has a place for mental health reasons, just like people take medication for medical reasons like asthma or diabetes. I haven't really seen situations where medication doesn't help at all, but it can take some time to find the right medication for a person because everybody's different and some medications work well for some people and not for everybody. A lot of research has shown that therapy and medication together are the most beneficial in alleviating symptoms for things like depression and anxiety. So relying on medication alone may not help everybody, but it can be really effective. Lastly, I interviewed a school psychologist who also has experience with dealing with children who have anxiety and or depression. What would you think is the easiest way to calm down whenever somebody feels either anxious or they get struck with a depressive episode?
Oh gosh, well, that's a loaded question. I wouldn't say that there's an easiest way.
Right.
There's definitely multiple ways, and so sometimes the easiest things to do, that anybody can implement, is some physical strategies. A lot of times people think of them as relaxation strategies or whatnot, but it doesn't have to be a relaxation strategy such as, deep breathing or muscle relaxation strategies, but even something as simple as getting some exercise, getting your blood flowing in some way, it doesn't have to be going to the gym and working out for an hour and a half. It can be going for a walk, getting some fresh air, walking out of class and going to get a drink of water, asking to go use the restroom, but just take a nice slow walk to the bathroom to kind of change your mindset a little bit and give yourself a chance to breathe. And so sometimes those physical strategies, eating something, drinking something, a nice cool beverage. I don't know about you, but I love iced tea. And there's something that feels so good about just a nice cold glass of iced tea. And it gives you a physical sensation of calm and some sort of positive feeling. And something as simple as that sometimes can give you a little bit of hope that it's possible that I might be able to feel better.
Yeah. And are there any treatments if calming down by yourself is not possible?
Well, I kind of touched on a couple of things there.
Right, yeah.
But certainly there's a lot that can be done. Not just going to seek a professional. What we do on a daily basis matters, and being part of something bigger. Having goals, doing something physical, doing something that stimulates you intellectually, doing something that gives you some socialization. A lot of times people think, oh, I just hung out with my friends today. No, hanging out with your friends is really important. And if you don't have a lot of friends, finding another way to socialize, whether it would be family or activities, just seeing people. We as humans are social creatures, believe it or not, and so we feed off that. Even people who are shy and somewhat introverted, still we all need socialization. So I always say it's so important to be connected to other people.
Right.
So if you're having a hard time dealing with something on your own, you ask the question, what if you can't calm yourself? Reaching out to somebody else, friend, family, professional, doesn't make a difference, but that's so important for our overall well-being.
Okay. I think I should share my own experiences I've had with anxiety and depression. For the longest time, I always thought that I was out of place. The earliest memory I've had of that feeling was around elementary school, of like being left out and just being an outcast, and it sucked. Then middle school came by, and that was when things got worse, because I was being targeted because of my skin color, being called racial slurs, and that made me think, damn, do I really belong here? And I took it personal. I feel like I just didn't belong there. And I was just really insecure about myself, and I'd overthink every single thing. How I looked, the way I dressed, my height, my skin color. It was an overflow of thoughts in middle school, and it was hell. It was absolutely hell. And around when high school began, I felt it was getting better, but at the same time, it wasn't. Like new school, high school, things would get better, but those thoughts was burned into my mind by myself. I would just think down on myself. I never really paid much attention to myself in a good way, and I felt worthless. Like I was the clown. I was trying to make everyone smile and laugh, but what was it doing for me? I just felt worthless. I don't know why. But as high school went on, I found amazing people that I adore, and they made me feel better about myself and make me think good about myself. I started opening up more to my family and talking to them a lot more, and it felt good to talk to somebody, just in general, about anything, whether it be your family, your friends, even your animals or pets. There's always going to be someone there for you. It took me a while to realize that I'm not alone. I'm really not. I got back into the things that I lost interest in back in middle school when I was in that hell, such as reading comic books, reading in general, writing, taking photographs and videos, skateboarding. It all came back to me because the people I hung out with were just so good. It made me realize that I belong to something or somebody. I'm not worthless anymore. For once in my life, I'm content with where things are going. If I were to travel back in time and tell my younger self, 8th grade self, that I wanted to become a doctor and that I'm going to a college, I wouldn't believe it. I wouldn't believe it. My past self would say, oh, that's too good to be true. But looking back on it now, it is true. I'm really determined about my future when back then I wasn't. And I think that's an amazing step to where my life is going. With that being said, I'm Jonathan Kaplan. And again, you matter.